a tour of our vegetable garden. Go in and take a look at all the plants that are growing in our raised beds. We'll start here in some of the square beds that I built last year in this corner. We have some flowers and edible flowers like dahlia and also some okra, red okra and a green okra growing here. And this is a eggplant, and we have, I believe, 12 different varieties this year. All these plants were started from seed, and they're doing good. Been a very hot summer so far. Interestingly, I did want to point something out. Some of these plants actually have thorns right in the inside in the leaves and on the branches, which is really interesting. And these are our peppers. Peppers, for some reason, don't seem to be doing too good this year. Some of these plants are still small. Again, this is the first year we've started all of these from seed, but you can see some of these peppers plants have not grown much. It's been about a couple of months. You'll see hot peppers, sweet peppers, Italian sweet peppers, and bell peppers, red, green, yellow, and orange. And these are our tomatoes. This year we actually planted more tomatoes. Again, these were started from seed, so it feels really good how well they're growing. Normally I spray aspirin every few weeks to keep leaf diseases from getting them, but so far this year they have been behaving. This one is almost 3 feet tall, and we have cherry tomatoes, grape tomatoes, sauce tomatoes like Romas for making pasta sauce, and wonderful tomatoes to make tomato chutneys or just salad and salsa. Some of these tomatoes finally have flowers, which is nice to see. And I plant them inside these 1 foot by 1 foot tomato cages that are almost 5 feet tall, and in the middle I actually use these fiberglass poles that are to keep the plants together, and actually have a velcro piece to hold them to the fiberglass pole, and this way the plants grow straight and tall. And then we actually had some extra tomatoes that I decided to plant two to a cage. Curious how this will come out, particularly with the cherry tomatoes. It might be too crowded, but we'll find out. And these are zucchini yellow squashes. You can actually see one fruit here. Yellow squashes, of course, and zucchinis, they have male and female flowers, so we have to be constantly on the lookout. Most of the time, early in the season, we get only male flowers that attracts the bees and butterflies. Unfortunately, there aren't enough bees and butterflies around, so we have to rely on human intervention. In this particular case, we have a little paintbrush waiting for us here, and when the female flowers open up, we go to the male flowers, pick the pollen, and apply it to the female flowers so that they get fertilized. We have two fertilized yellow squashes here. We do grow a couple of different mints, spearmint, mojito mints, peppermints in small pots, and these are also connected to the drip irrigation system. Here you see some root vegetables, beets, both red and white beets, and in between are carrots. This is the first time I've had a reasonable crop of carrots growing. Hopefully they are spaced right, and hopefully we won't get mangled carrots to harvest. Perhaps the best thing is our discovery of a slow bolt cilantro, coriander leaves. It is just beautiful. We have harvested quite a bit of it, and on the edges we have planted dill. Again, dill we harvest pretty quick so that it doesn't get too big and start self-seeding. That's the reason they call it dill weed, because it grows like a weed once it self-seeds. I'll show you some of the greens we grow on the edges on the shallow side of these V-shaped raised beds. This is arugula. It is our favorite green for salads. We plant it a week to 2 weeks apart, the seeds, and thin it out after a week after they germinate, and then pretty much keep pulling leaves, and when the plants get too big we pull the entire plants and start another batch. This is spinach, and again spinach is doing very good this year. We have two varieties of spinach we're growing, and both of them have done really good. And we grow, I believe this year we have 4 rows of spinach that we have grown, some next to the peppers and some next to the tomatoes, and all of them are looking really good this year. We have already harvested it a couple of times and made vegan palak paneer with tofu, and it has just been awesome. And this is Swiss chard. Uh, um, it's again beautiful plant, some with white stem, some with red stem, and they grow all year. The leaves are massive, and we can even harvest them, chop them up, and freeze them to use the next year. Another favorite green that we like to grow is fenugreek, methi. We harvest it and make vegetable with potatoes, stir fried, or we put it in a rice dish. Again, this year we planted 2 rows of methi, but typically once it gets big enough like it is here, and it starts flowering, we tend to harvest it right away because we don't want it again growing like a weed everywhere in the garden. Years ago we started experimenting with edible flowers a few years ago, and violets are one of our favorite edible flowers in salads. We use it as like a garnish, and it's beautiful how the violets grow. Volunteer plants every year because they self seed, and we pretty much plant, like this year I think we planted close to 5 rows of these, all from volunteers that came up from flowers that went to seed last year. And boy, they do not only look good, they taste good, and the myriad of colors that you can find in these violets, they are more close to the natural violets, I guess, which is why they self seed so well. But it is really wonderful to have these to add more color to our salads that we pick pretty much all summer long. We do like to start basil from seed. It loves to grow in clumps, and we put them in small pots, but then sometimes we expand it and we take it out and spread it out to the raised bed so that we can get bigger plants. And I even have this year a dedicated basil square in the back of the garden here, which came from, again, I don't know, volunteers from last year maybe, but maybe we had a plant here that went to seed. But and you can see pole beans growing behind the basil here, and started late, but it's coming out. Out in the back end of our garden, under the shade trees, we have a lot of hostas growing. We transplanted these from other parts of our garden because the deer kept eating them. And you can see how some of these have leaves that are eaten, but hopefully we will find a new home for them inside our fence. And here I have beneficial insects that I put in, whether it is bees or other insects that actually help with parasitic insects in the vegetable garden, like aphids. So the insects have been really wonderful for us in terms of helping maintain a low pest garden without having to use dangerous chemicals. This this is another green that we plant. Tends to take up a lot of water. Ah, there's some beautiful volunteer mushrooms growing here. But this is kale. We have both red Russian and white Russian kale growing here. The kale is nice. It's nice both sautéed and as a salad. But we tend to not plant too many of these because the plants get really big and then we end up harvesting a lot of leaves and freezing them and then struggling all spring to finish up the kale that we froze the previous year and didn't use up in the winter. But it is delicious and it's very healthy. Another herb that loves to grow in clumps and pots is parsley. Again, we make Lebanese salad tabbouleh with this, with either farro or with bulgur cracked wheat, or with the couscous with millet. So it's one of our favorite herbs. This is a potato, a volunteer that came from a potato we forgot to harvest last year. Last year we planted a lot, but this year we are taking it easy, just growing this volunteer in a pot. We have these fierce lions guarding our vegetable garden from the rabbits and the squirrels, and a couple of potted plants. Sometimes we put bird seed in this picnic table for the rabbits and squirrels to munch on, so they will not try to break through the chicken wire fence and munch on our vegetables. Here's another volunteer. This is called a snapdragon and it's self-seeded. It's a beautiful flowering plant. It's so many seeds from just one plant that we planted last year that we have spread it out everywhere. And here you can see some bush beans that have just germinated. They will be in the middle of the bed with snapdragons lacing them all around. And another thing that we love to grow every year is again a volunteer plant, morning glory. It's a vine that grows beautifully, so we planted it all along the chicken wire fence along with the snapdragons in these pots. And here is a Karela, and we have also planted loofah and snake gourd this year. And you can see some spearmints. So this is a fence garden, as I like to call it. And here's all the morning glories. You can see some of the vines have gotten pretty big, and they will be flowering pretty much all the way through October, November. Some herbs here, rosemary, and there is oregano, and this is lavender. And again, here's a look at how the morning glory is growing on the top of the chicken wire fence all the way up to the 6 foot mark. And that's the entire chicken wire fence becomes a lush green fence at the end of the summer. And these are chives that grow every year. And here's a lovely, gorgeous Karela flower. I love these flowers. They just look so beautiful. And the chives, we again pick the blossoms in the spring. They come out every year. They're a perennial. And that's about it for our garden.